Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Sanctuary for All talk on the Sermon on the Mount. Today's study, we're going to be going over a very important part. Well, all of them are important, really, but we're going to be going over a very interesting part and one that is probably affects us all on some levels, and many of us to a greater degree than to others. But it is the section on lust. And this is found in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 through 30, where adultery beginning in the heart and lust beginning in the heart. Now, what I'd like to do with this portion is I'm going to go through some notes that I have, but I'd also like to share from personal experience, just in a general way, because, for some of the things that I hope to express today, there needs to be a little bit of experience and authority behind those, so that, I'm not a guy who's never worked on a car telling you how to fix an engine, or, sharing the best ways to go about doing something like that when I have no experience. I myself have a great deal of experience with the concept of lust. And so at I hope this will be informative because, we're just going over a couple of verses here, but they are power packed and very important to where Jesus is taking the whole message of transferring us from the physical laws of the world and the physical discipline of the flesh and mankind into the place of the actual spirit, where life actually is, where eternal life actually is, the source of things. It's actually the greater reality than our physical reality here. And so, once again, he's expressing his deep, profound authority over these matters when he is discussing these things with us. Because, once again, he starts off in verse 27 with, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell." And in verse 30, he says, "And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell." Now, we already went over you've heard of old, but I say to you in the previous portion on anger and murder, and where that comes from and what he's addressing there. But these three verses here, or four actually, have a great deal of information in them. And so if we go back to one of the oldest Middle English translations, the Wycliffe Bible from 1382, which was way before the King James Version, it says, "But I say to you that every man that seeth a woman to covet her hath now done lechery by her in his heart." So one of the oldest versions in English, it uses a couple of different words. It instead of lust, it uses covet, and adultery, lechery. So this preserves the very medieval understanding of coveting somebody, and lechery being a sexual sin. In Wycliffe's time, lechery was sexual coveting. A lecher was one who covets, and to lech was to desire someone improperly. So that's where we get the word of lech. It did not originally mean merely lustful or immoral. It meant a person whose desire reaches outward in covetous intention. So a lecher is literally a coveter, specifically coveting someone sexually. So, and I believe it's important that we really define what lust is and what Jesus is trying to say here, and why. Because a great many churches over the years have run with this and said, if you do this, you're going to be cast into hell forever and ever and ever. And it's very important that we go over these words and understand what it is that's being talked about here. In the Greek word for lust, that in the verb that Jesus used, it meant to set one's desire upon, to long for intentionally, to covet, and to direct the will toward possessing, that's very important. So, because he's not talking about passive noticing somebody. This is an act of actually inner grasping. It's a movement of our will. And it's also the same verb used in the Greek Old Testament for the 10th commandment, that you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. And that's in Exodus 20, verse 17. So Jesus is actually quoting the command directly, but he's applying it inwardly. And the early English clarifies this. To lust means to look at a woman towards lusting with the intention to desire. This describes an aim, not just a reaction. And of course, Wycliffe, who we went over, where it says a woman to covet her, to covet, to want to possess, to want to take. And of course, the King James says, looketh upon a woman to lust after her, to lust after her. Again, to implies intention. So Jesus isn't talking about a spontaneous feeling. He's not saying that you have broken some law just because you notice somebody is beautiful. We're supposed to notice that somebody is beautiful. We're supposed to, be attracted to people. That's a biological built-in thing to us. What he's discussing here and how this, is expounded upon is he's actually discussing when internally we then start plotting and planning and fantasizing within ourselves about possessing someone. And we'll get into that a little bit more here. So attraction is an involuntary thing where lust is actually an intentional one. Attraction happens to us, right? We're just, wow, that person's gorgeous, right? And of course, we get attracted to those who later become our mates, or we ask them out on dates, or, want to share our lives with them and stuff. Of course, there's always going to be some type of physical attraction. But that's about sharing a life together, not about possessing somebody as though a slave. So attraction is noticing beauty. Lust is aiming a desire to possess someone. Attraction is a reaction, whereas lust is a direction. So Jesus is not condemning the biological reaction to beauty or the initial emotional spark, I want to get to know that person, or the awareness of someone who's very lovely and attractive in a person. He's addressing the inner movement of grasping, the will of turning towards possession or use. So this is why he ties it to adultery, because adultery is taking something that's not given to you, that's not yours. So lust is the inward preparation and intent to take. Lust is the inward decision to use someone for our own gratification, even if the outward act never happens. So the important part here, too, is that, Jesus always locates sin at the source, not the outcome. In the Sermon on the Mount, he repeatedly shows how anger is the root of murder, and coveting and lust is the root of adultery. So this mirrors his teaching also in Matthew 15:19, where he says, out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries. The act of adultery is the fruit of the tree, where desire is the tree itself. So inward lust reveals the truth of a person's will, of what it is they have decided they agree with. The outward act can be prevented by circumstance, fear, shame, or lack of opportunity. The inward lust is prevented only by the truth of a person's heart. The inward movement of the will is the true moral reality that stands before God's throne. So the inward desire violates the personhood of another person. Inward lust treats the other person as an object, a possession, a means to gratification, or a tool for imagined pleasures. So even if no act is committed, the heart has already reduced somebody else's dignity, stripped their divine image, taken something from them in imagination, and used them as an object in the reality of their own imagination and will. Inward lust fractures relationships, purity, and honor, even in the private realm. Like I said, I'll expound upon all this, but first I want to kind of get through so we understand what lust actually is. Inward sin is not restrained by external consequences. Outward sins can be stopped by law or society or lack of opportunity or fear or physical limitations. But inward sins exist unrestricted They are committed in the imagination. They can be practiced endlessly. They can grow unchecked, and they shape the heart into corruption. So Jesus is targeting the reality beyond human law, the realm where moral truth actually lives, and the part of us, our heart, our intent, our will, that which we create ourselves is what is before God, because that is our life. So once again, this whole part was just to point out that lust is not seeing something and finding it beautiful or finding it even attractive or wanting to align yourself with it, like looking for somebody to be a potential mate or a potential partner, a couple. It's the lusting after something is the desire to possess it and control it in the way that we are creating the fantasy within us about them. And it completely removes the integrity and the sovereignty of another human being. We're looking upon another as an object rather than as a living human being when we lust after them. Uh, and because it's not consensual, obviously, unless when you get into marriages and stuff like that, that's a whole other thing, but that's for a different talk. Because the relationship there, of course, is different, and a husband and wife have every right to together decide how it is that they wish to proceed with their intimate life, and how they wish to be. But this is something, talking on a different level. This is where Christ is trying to show us the difference between the human function that dies anyway and goes into the grave, and that which actually lives on, and that which actually we have aligned ourselves with. We have aligned ourselves with lust because, we weren't born uh, with this issue. Somewhere along the line, we aligned ourselves with this issue and agreed with this issue, but we'll get further into that as we go here. So also next, let's take a look at where Jesus uses the words hell. So he says, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And then he also says, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And some of the things that we need to go over here is which word of hell did he use and why? And also, what's the significance of the right eye and the right hand? Because that's important too to this entire message he's trying to get across. So it's a radical inward remedy that he's going to start proposing here throughout the Sermon on the Mount. But the word hell he used here is the word Gehenna. He didn't use the word Hades, which is the realm of the dead. He did not use the word Sheol, which is the Hebrew underworld. He did not use Tartarus, which is the Greek mythological prison, but he specifically used Gehenna. So he said, your whole body be cast into Gehenna. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this could be, because, the Jewish law stoned adulterers to death. And that was part of the Moses' law. And of course, their bodies would just be thrown into the Valley of Hinnom. Gehenna was a real physical valley just south of Jerusalem. It was a place associated with ancient Israel's darkest sins. It's a site where children were once sacrificed to Moloch. It's considered cursed ground. And it's later used as a burning, for burning garbage pit. In Jesus' day, that's what it was. It's where they burnt garbage. And it was constantly smoldering with fire, smoke, and decay. So in the Jewish imagination, Gehenna is the symbolic image of what happens when the heart becomes corrupted, defiled, and destroyed from the outside. By the actual act of it, of course, adultery would lead to stoning. And then oftentimes people who were killed for their sins, their bodies would just be thrown into the fire and burned up as garbage. But Jesus isn't talking about the physical act of adultery here. He's talking about lust. So he's comparing the inward with the outward. So it's a symbolic image of what happens when our heart becomes corrupted, defiled, and destroyed from the inside. And this is an important thing that we'll get to a little bit later, because oftentimes, most of us, when we are enthralled or in the grips of lust, are not even aware of this very fact about what's going on in us because of the tenacity of the promise of lust. But the point in him using Gehenna is that he's not primarily talking about God throwing people into fire or a medieval hellscape or a post-death punishment imagery. It's about the ultimate ruin of the self, the collapse of who you truly are, because it's a part of your heart that has been taken over by lust, rather than a free part of yourself that is able to make choices and decisions on your own. So, why he used Gehenna in those verses? It's because he's not talking, he's not actually talking about gouging out literal eyes or cutting off literal hands or punishing misbehaving bodies. He's teaching that inward corruption destroys the whole person more surely than any physical loss. Therefore, it's better that one of your members perish than for your whole self to be thrown into Gehenna. In other words, it's better to lose anything, any habit, any pattern, any identity piece, than to let your heart become corrupted and fall into the ruin of lust. He is speaking of the inner destruction, not the bodily punishment. He's speaking about the part, like I said, that is our actual life, that we have somehow agreed with and put ourselves into a position where lust has overtaken us, and we have a difficult time getting over it. So it's not about, of course, the bodily punishment. And this is why this matters, because Jesus is talking about the heart, not the outward act. He's saying, you have heard it said about adultery, but I say, if you look upon somebody to possess them, to take them, to have your way with them, you have committed this sin of lust in your heart. Because losing your hand does not destroy you. Losing your heart's purity does. And he's talking about being destroyed in Gehenna, in hell. Losing an eye does not ruin your life, but losing your inward integrity does ruin your life. And losing a limb does not corrupt your soul, but losing the heart to coveting does corrupt your soul. This is why Gehenna is the perfect word for his teaching. It means if you don't address inward corruption, it will destroy your whole self the way Gehenna destroys everything that's thrown into it. I hope that makes a lot of sense, that he's using imagery that they there would understand, but we need to understand it because, like I said, there have been many pastors and preachers and societies over a period of time that have been so punishing and so demeaning and so demanding that everybody behave purely. And if you lust after somebody, you're going to burn in hell forever and ever and ever. And so this just causes people to lie and pretend, and then they still have lust in their heart. It completely takes everyone away from the actual message that he's saying, that we need to address the inside of us, the inside of our cup. That is what needs to be cleaned up, because we can be extremely corrupted with something like lust without ever having an outward action that anyone ever sees. And therefore, we're never in trouble. We never broke any laws. We never, So, but to Christ, he's trying to say this is what actually lives before the throne of God. This is what is a part of us that we have endured, and we have to do something about, and something can be done about it. And that's the good news. So let's get on to this next thing. Why does he talk about the right hand and the right eye? In Jewish thought, the right side is the side of strength and honor. All throughout Scripture, the right hand is the hand of power, the right arm is the arm of might, the right eye is the stronger, more valuable eye, and the right side is the side of blessing. And some of the examples of that is like Exodus 15:6, where your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power. Psalms 110, verse 1, sit at my right hand. Psalms 118:15, the right hand of the Lord does valiantly. And of course, Acts 7, verse 55, Jesus stands at the right hand of God. So in the ancient world, the right side was the dominant side, the preferred side, the honored side, the side used for blessing, the side used for oaths, and the side of skill and action. So Jesus isn't saying remove a random part of your life. He's saying remove even the strongest, most valuable part of your inner life if it cooperates with sin. And the right eye, of course, is your dominant way of seeing things and imagining things. The right eye symbolizes your strongest way of perceiving, your preferred gaze, right? Your natural inclination and imagination, and the part of your inner vision you rely on the most. So if the way you naturally see things inwardly is feeding the sin, we must be willing to give up even our dominant way of viewing the world in order to be healed from this malady of lust. And of course, the right hand is your dominant will, your capability, and your action. The right hand is your power to act, your dominant skill, your strongest faculty, your strongest capacity, your will, your initiative, your ability to reach out inwardly. In Scripture, a person's right hand is either their identity, their strength, their competence, their authority, or their ability to bless. So Jesus here is essentially saying, even if your strongest qualities, your most gifted parts, your greatest abilities begin to cooperate with sin, cut out that cooperation off at the root, because sin corrupts strength just as quickly as it does weakness. And that's why, why did he use right instead of left? Because the left was the non-dominant side. Removing the left eye or hand would imply removing something weaker, removing something less essential, making a sacrifice that didn't really cost much. But Jesus is describing something far more costly. He's about removing a part of our inner life that we've actually depended upon, our preferred imagination, our favored way of seeing things, our natural inclinations, our strongest impulses. The part of us that thinks, well, this is just who I am. That's the part that must be surrendered if it leads to the inward sin of lust. So since Jesus is addressing the heart, not the flesh, the cutting off must also be internal. So what exactly inside us is he calling us to surrender? Because you can't cut out sinful desires by force. They have to be starved or taken over by a greater love, a greater power. This is why Jesus uses hyperbolic bodily amputation as the metaphor, because you cannot cut out the heart literally. You cannot cut off desire physically, and you cannot remove the will by violence against yourself. So what he's actually saying is he's starting to teach us how real inner transformation works. And that's the first step, is for us to look at what is actually causing the sin. So we cut off sinful desire by breaking our agreement with it. Lust, coveting, sinful imagination, all of them survive because of our agreement with them. The member Jesus refers to is the part of our heart that agrees with the fantasy, that welcomes the desire, that delights in imagining it, that rehearses the act in the secret inward theater. To cut it off means that we have to withdraw the yes, not the desire. We don't have to withdraw our desires for intimacy or sex, but our consent to the lust of possessing another. We have to cut off the consent. Desire may arise involuntarily. It just happens. We'll see something, whoa, I'm so attracted to that person. But that's not lust. That's just desire. That's just us having a physical reaction to something beautiful. But inward agreement is the voluntary part. And that means, refusing to welcome the thought, refusing to fantasize, refusing to give the desire a home that lives in us, refusing to let imagination nurse it into life. This is the actual surgery Jesus is describing. We have to make the decision that we no longer agree with our lust. Now, some people get there and then try on their own willpower to change their behavior. But you cannot destroy sin by white-knuckling or by shaming yourself or by hating yourself, or by trying to suppress feelings, or by punishing your flesh. Even psychology has proven that all those methods only make sin stronger. They deepen shame, they reinforce the ego, and they split the self. And the reason why is because we do not actually have the power to cut out our own sinful desire. Only God can perform this kind of heart surgery. We do not have the power alone to overcome lust when it has rooted in our heart. Just like a broken mind cannot heal a broken mind. And what are the reasons? Why are we powerless here? Because the inward sin changes the self even when nothing outward happens. And this is a vital point to lust. The outward act corrupts the body, but the inward desire corrupts the identity. Inward lust trains the mind to objectify. Instead of seeing life as it truly is and others as they truly are, we objectify things based in our own God-created world within inside ourselves. So it erodes the capacity for genuine love. It reshapes the heart around self-centered desire. It divorces our will from purity, and it habituates even more coveting. As soon as you covet one, well, hey, there's another one. And it just suddenly becomes easier and easier to do. And it also alters our relational posture to everything and everyone around us. The inner life actually shapes our whole person. So to God, the inward desire is the truth of our person in front of him, what he sees, because it is what we have chosen. And it has taken us into a darkness where we cannot see those transformations that have taken place. We still think we love people. We still think that we see somebody for how they really are, but we don't. That's the whole point. The power of sin is that it deceives us. So we are deceived. The beliefs we have about these things are corrupted. We cannot see the truth about them. We can only actually see the effect of it. And, that comes out in our behavior. How much time do we spend lustfully looking at things that we shouldn't be looking at, or lustfully doing things, or how long do we daydream in a day? We can see the cause and effect, but we can't see the changes that has happened in us until we start to heal from those things. And this is important, that we have to understand that somewhere along the line, we made the agreement that to lust after someone was desirable. We agreed with it. And we now, now that we understand that we agreed with it, and now we want to break that agreement, we find out that we cannot heal it alone. And that's when we get to the point where we have to make a decision to ask God to heal us. And that is then we begin to see that the sinful desire is not actually us. We are the ones who no longer agree. We are the ones who try hard to overcome, but can't. We are the ones who want to be healed. So we see that the sinful desire is not us, but something in us. And Paul says the same thing in Romans 7, verse 17. He says, "It is no longer I who do it, but sin living in me." So as soon as you break the agreement that you no longer want to lust, it is no longer you. You are the one who is now before God saying, "I have broken this agreement." But I have known many scores of men who have struggled deeply with this. And that's the whole point in the process of deception and the power of the one who had deceived us about the qualities and the greatness of lust. This is part of the process of keeping us trapped, is we then try to change our behavior. We try to do things that are right. We try to, discipline ourselves. Once again, all bodily activities. And we're missing the point that the lust is in our heart. We agreed with it, and therefore the power of that got rooted into us by a spirit greater than us. And we don't, like I said, I've known guys that are just, and they start shaming themselves. Man, I don't want to lust anymore. And I believe them. They don't want to, but they just can't help themselves. and they don't know why. And they find themselves in a position where they're just as powerless about their desire for, lust creeping up over and over and over again, and them running back to pornography or to, some other thing, or fantasizing about somebody or whatever it is that is truly bothersome to them that they no longer want to do with their lives. And yet they can't seem to stop, and they don't understand why. It's because we don't have the power to stop it. We have to remember we were deceived by a greater power. We were deceived by the Lord of the earth, a spirit, Satan, who has no limitations like we have, has far greater intelligence than we will ever have and ever understand while we're human beings. And we were enticed by lust, and it looked good, and we ate of it. We ate of that apple. We ate of that tree, the tree of lust. And now it is rooted in us, and we can't dig it out. But the first step is that we first break our agreement. But from there, we got to stop shaming ourselves at the trouble of rooting it out. It's going to probably, for most people, be a lifelong, daily commitment. But there's a wonderful promise. And for some people, it'll be an automatic, instantaneous healing and cure. And we'll get to how God does that and why. But that is the thing. All those, any men who may be watching this now who are struggling with lust and are shaming themselves that they keep failing, stop. Stop shaming yourself. You're going to fail. That's the whole point. Lust is a greater power than us alone. We have to have God's power in order to heal this. Even Jesus said, your faith has healed you, which is a power greater than us. Faith is a power greater than us. We have to go to God to heal us from this, and we have to lay this before God and bring these things to Him. That's very, very important that we get this. We made the agreement with lust, and the first step will be to break the agreement. And for some people, that'll take a long time. So some people that are just like, well, I don't think it's a big deal or whatever, and they still enjoy doing what they're doing. But for those struggling, and I know this well because I have been through the process of struggling with this most of my life. And there was literally nothing that I could do about it. It's like a guy trying to get off of heroin or, off of crack cocaine or off of alcohol. They just can't. They want to. They admitted the first problem that they're an addict or they're an alcoholic. But there's a second problem that their lives are completely unmanageable. There's nothing they can do to change that fact. They no longer want to be that way. They no longer want to destroy their lives, but they can't seem to stop. And so therefore they have to have a relationship with God, and they have to rely on God to be the one to heal them. So for those that are struggling with lust, stop trying to fix it yourself. It's never going to happen. And then, of course, more shame comes in, and the only way to answer the shame of lust is with more lust, because you're going to, get so crazy and so incensed, and that zipper effect happens in psychology, where suddenly now we're going to strip clubs again and we're doing all sorts of stuff again because we need relief from the pain of struggling with lust. The power of lust is greater than us because it enticed us in the first place and deceived us in the first place, and we could not see it was a deception. That is the proof. It is a greater intelligence than we are. We couldn't see it was a deception. We agreed. We thought it was gorgeous. We thought it was wonderful, just like the story in the Garden of Eden. But once we disagree and break that agreement, then that's where we find, when we're at that spot where we start to realize that we're powerless to change it. So, but it's no longer us. We're the ones, see, we have made the inner commitment. But now to actually overcome lust, we need to have God's help. We were lured in by the lie of that desire. So, how can we believe that we have the intelligence, the power, or the strength to be greater than our own deceiver? Uh, but the great solution for this, and this is the solution that I have found that I have to actually practice on a daily basis, is that I have to ask God to be the power in my life to overcome that which I cannot overcome on my own. And you know what? God will always help anyone who honestly asks. And that's the key. We could say, oh, get me through this night of drunkenness because we're sick. And then the next day we don't, we go right back to it. That's because we don't actually mean it. But for those of you, and I know there are a great many men who struggle with this, for those of you that do struggle with this, the key is if you honestly do want it gone, God will start healing you. And I'm going to give you 12 verses in the Bible to express this very thing. God will do the work for us. He's always willing to help. See, here's the thing. God is a gentleman. See, God doesn't lust after us. He desires to share his inheritance with us. He desires to share and to give us co-heirs to the kingdom of heaven, to be our family, to be our brother, to be our God, but only if we choose it. See, do you understand? Our integrity and God doesn't not degrade us. He lifts us up. He treats us as valuable. So he's showing God doesn't covet us. He's not chasing us to worship him. He wants to be our friend and our ally and our family. He shows us the pure and true and moral desire to be with us and share with us all of life, because there is a true and moral desire to be with others. There is a true and moral desire to find beauty in others. Coveting is an entirely different thing, but that's the important part, is God will not fight that battle in us until we ask him to, until we stop trying to fight it and stop trying to judge ourselves and be our own judges and say, well, I failed today because I just couldn't stop with the pornography, or, I couldn't stop lusting after somebody, and so therefore I'm just a bad sinner and I'm a terrible person. Stop it. You're not going to win. That's the whole point. We were the ones weak enough to be deceived, but God is greater than that power that deceived us. God is greater than the deceiver and will always heal our heart if we surrender that part of our heart to him where lust exists and honestly desire for him to do so. And here are 12 verses expressing that very idea. Ezekiel 36, 26 through 27. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes. He will teach us and cause us to actually walk in a way where we desire to have people in our lives and be a part of their lives, but we respect and honor them enough to be as equal to us, to have their own decisions, and we don't try to possess them or take them or covet them. We actually honestly desire to just share life with them. Another one, number 2, Psalms 51:10. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. See, notice David doesn't say, help me clean my heart. He says, create in me, because David knows he cannot do it himself. He cannot clean his heart himself, but God can. Back to Ezekiel, number 3, chapter 11, 19 through 20. I will give them one heart, and I will put a new spirit within them, and I will take the stony heart out of their flesh. Once again, God saying how he will heal us of the things that have overtaken us. Deuteronomy 30, verse 6. The Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your descendants to love the Lord with your God with all your heart. See, there's the surgery. He circumcises the heart. He cuts off the part, or he takes it over. Either way, see, it's imagery to explain a process. That process right now is We allowed that part of ourselves to be taken over because we were allured by it and we thought it was wonderful. And now when we're like, this isn't wonderful, just kind of like I said, like an addict who says, I can't do this anymore, but he can't seem to stop. So he no longer agrees. He's no longer sees that it's beneficial. He wants to change his life, but he can't do it. Same thing here. God will circumcise that part out and put himself there and write his laws on our heart and heal us. Number 5, God writes his laws inside, not outside. Jeremiah 31:33. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. So he rewrites desire itself to be in line with his desire for life and enjoyment and creativity and beauty and wonderment, and to see other people as the beautiful beings that they are without having to possess them and fantasize about them or struggle with that, to see them as actually more beautiful and more wonderful than we can even through lusting after them. Acts 15 verse 9, purify their hearts by faith. So purity is supernatural. It comes through faith, not willpower. Once again, it's not about how strong you can be to be a right man and do the right thing. You're going to hear a lot of preachers tell you that you need to clean up your act. They're going back to the act of not committing adultery. They're missing the point. That this is a living spirit in our heart that we allowed in by agreeing with it and finding it, attractive to us and wanting it ourselves. And we, now breaking that agreement, have to have God remove it because it is a stronger power than we are that we have let in unknowingly. We were deceived. So stop judging yourself. God, why do you think Christ came to offer us eternal life and to pay for our sins? Because we were ignorant. We did not understand. We did not have the intelligence to know what it is we do. He even said that on the cross. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. We don't even understand the power in play here and the things that have taken place in us. We're just, distracted by all these things, and we fall into them because they make us feel good physically, and eventually over a period of time, they make us not feel good emotionally and spiritually, unless it is something that we, can share. Because, intimacy on any level, you share that with your wife openly or your husband openly. Those doors are wide open to whatever two people agree to. So you can have any type of life that you wish with your mate, because the important part is that it isn't a secret. It isn't hidden. It isn't something where you're trying to own or possess or take from another person. Do you see the difference? Whatever activities that you wish to do with your husband, with your wife, that you both desire to do, God himself blesses. So we don't have to listen to this activity is bad and that activity and this is... you design what you feel to be your ideal and honest sex life before God and before the mate you're with. And if they do the same with you, it will always be blessed, because the important part is that it is not hidden, it is not secret, and it is shared with somebody equally who desires it also. And that's in the privacy of your own relationship. It's nobody else's business. And it certainly isn't the business of anyone to tell you how you should behave in those ways. We have books in the Bible that show us examples. We have the Song of Solomon that shows us the examples of the great love and wonderment between two people. And how nothing, the whole point was that it was open. It was shared between them. That wasn't a secret. That's what Jesus is getting at here. What we think is hidden in us is actually screaming out loud in the real world of the spirit life before God's throne. The rest of it, the physical, just dies. We have instincts, and we get overblown instincts. And, just like any vehicle, we have to maintain those instincts. And of course, to the physical life, there are behaviors and activities we have to do in order to function in a society without getting thrown into jail and all that other kind of stuff. But our instincts are God-given. Our desire for others was God-given. It was built into us in order for us to procreate and to share a wonderful life with somebody and to share a wonderful intimacy with somebody and to have something private and personal that's relational just between you two. And it's such an important thing that it is actually the way life is created. Through the intimacy of two, another is born. So it is actually this extremely sacred, extremely beautiful thing between peoples. Lust is the desire to steal something and control it as God, but God doesn't steal or control. Satan does. So we somehow thought that, oh yes, this dreaming and this imagination makes us like God. I get to do this. I get to want them, and who can stop me? And the God we're worshiping is not God the Father. It's not Jesus Christ. It's the God of death that wants to twist us up inside in such a way that we don't even know it. We actually think we want it. Number 7, another verse where God does the work of healing our hearts. For it is God, it's Philippians chapter 2, verse 13. For it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. So he changes both the desire, which is the will, and the ability, which is our ability to do things. He is willing to heal our own will and our own desire. That's all part of our heart. And then give us the ability to go out and function in a world where we can be around extremely beautiful people without lusting after them. I know alcoholics that they can go to bars and watch bands play and they have no desire to drink. They have become free by their reliance on God. They are free of that entrapment. As a matter of fact, seeing everybody drinking and get drunk and acting foolish makes them go, oh, I'm so glad I don't do this anymore. But they're there able to enjoy and support the band that is performing. They're not afraid to go to any place on earth because God has healed their heart in that and given them the ability to go out and live a life and do so even in the midst of what was their greatest enemy. And for those struggling with lust, it is no less an addiction that we are powerless over than it is for somebody addicted to a drug. It is a drug, very much so. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 16, to be strengthened with might through his Spirit in the inner man. So he's letting us know it's the Spirit that gives power to the inner fortitude, the inner obedience, the inner, we make the decision, I want to live this way, and God's Spirit gives us the power to go live that way, not us. We don't have the power. We're the ones that have the power to decide. God said, I put before you life and death. Choose life that you may live. If we choose life, he gives us life. The Holy Spirit gives us life. The Holy Spirit heals us and directs us and teaches us. We don't teach ourselves. If we taught ourselves, we wouldn't need books. We wouldn't need experience. We would just fantasize, right? About how wonderful we are and how great it would be if we had what we wanted. And we get stuck in a trap, then we don't even know we're in. We think it's actually great until it disturbs us so much and we realize how powerless we actually are over it. Number 9, Hosea chapter 14, verse 4, I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely. So he heals the tendency to wander and that inner bent in us. So all of you that are struggling and you I fell for it again. And I went out to a strip club or I paid a prostitute or I did whatever. And I'm hiding and saying, God will heal that. He will give you a way through it and a way out of it. He will give you the power to overcome these things if you honestly desire it. He will make you clean. He promises this all over the Bible. Number 10, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3. Write them on the tablet of your heart. The tablet of your heart. So God writes mercy and truth on the heart. His laws, his ways. Number 11, Jeremiah 17, verse 10. I, the Lord, search the heart. So God searches our hearts in order to help and to transform. He roots out, if we say, I am overtaken by this, I can't seem to stop. God himself will look in every area of our heart that has become corrupt, and he will kick that demon out. He will kick that power out. He will then write his laws of love and grace and joy and beauty and peace and humanity and wonderment, so that we could see the beauty of people as they actually are, instead of just something to conquer and to take and to have. And number 12, Ezekiel 36:25. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. The inner cleansing only God can perform. Inward lust violates the divine order of life, even if no one is harmed, because what we have harmed is our perception, our understanding. We have harmed our own integrity. Sin doesn't become sin because someone gets hurt. Sin is sin because it violates love, truth, and the divine order that God has ordained for eternal life. Now, I'll try to get to some of my own personal life here. I think we're running a little long, but this has been one of the great, well, there's an old saying in South America, a very old saying that lust is the biggest demon in hell. And that makes a lot of sense. It is a strong, strong power, and one impossible for someone to overcome on their own. And that is why we have to have God. And there's work to do. Now, some of us can just go before God and lay it all bare and say, I am honestly ready. I don't ever want to live this way again. And all of it can just vanish right then and there. And some of us need more help. Maybe we need psychologists, psychiatrists. We need to talk things out. Some of us need a friend, like I said, somebody who's not going to gossip, not going to share it with others, that we can talk to about our struggles and about, so that they can help us to let go. They can help us to trust God. The problem is we don't trust God with this. We're still trusting ourselves to overcome, and ourselves and our own opinions, and we're not quite convinced yet that we need to let go of the lust in our heart towards others that is destroying us, because we still haven't quite yet seen how much it's destroying us. And that's the trick. We're not going to see how much it's destroying us. We don't have the power. All we can see is the end goal and the outcome, thinking it's going to be something that we want. But how many of us have gotten what we want and afterwards felt dirty and terrible and horrible? Because that's who we really are. We got swept up with lust, but the real us doesn't want those things, doesn't want to be that way. So we can go before God honestly and say, I don't actually want this, but I'm confused. I'm blindsided. I can't see the truth. I need you to help me. And when we do that, we are oftentimes willing to discuss it with someone else in order to get help, because it's not about shame. If is the ant ashamed that I can overpower him? I am millions of times bigger than an ant, or hundreds of thousands of. We don't have to be ashamed that lust has overtaken us. But the great news is, since we're the one that made the agreement, we're the ones that can break the agreement. See, that's not something Satan can take away from you. He can't take away your right to choose, because God is the one who gave you the right to choose. He gave you the right to choose life or death. And that choice will always be yours. So the good news is that first step, that power is in your hands, and no one can take it from you. So you can say, I struggle with this. I can't overcome it. And this is indeed something that I myself add to my morning prayers on a daily basis, and I have to. It's one of those things that I have been powerless over. In my 20s, I was surrounded daily by some of the world's most beautiful women. I was in rock and roll bands. I worked in the entertainment industry in Hollywood, California, throughout my 20s. And lust was a part of something that we actually promoted, something that we fed upon, something that we fed to people, something that, because they wanted it, and we would make money off of other people's lust. And failed relationship after not being able to see the truth with anybody, I finally had to deal with the fact that I lived my entire sexual life as a womanizer, as a fornicator, as an adulterer, many times with others who were married, with myself who was married. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. And it wasn't until I was in enough pain over all the losses in my life and over how much pain I had caused other people that I never wanted to cause them pain. I never wanted to cause any of the women that I was with pain. I had a fantasy of how great it would be to, I did not wish to cause them pain. But they would see, oh, there's a potential mate, someone to be in a relationship with, and I would just use them and then leave or depart or whatever the case may be, right? I would make promises that weren't true because the lust was dictating to me how I would act to get the end result of what it was that I wanted. And what that did was cause me to harm other people and take from other people and look at them as like objects. And then to sell that in entertainment to others, knowing their lust would get them to pay for these things because they wanted to fulfill I was very corrupt and very sick. And when I got to a place where I understood that I'm the one who agreed with this and tried to break it, I couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix it. I was distressed beyond belief. I felt weak. I felt like a terrible man. I carried so much shame. So much. I've known wonderful people in my life that have gotten severely wounded by my lust that I never wished to harm. I would not wish harm upon them. But I'm the one who harmed them by my behavior and also just my not being there because I'm off living in the fantasy. So I'm not really there. I can't see them for who they are. I can see them today. Because I finally surrendered to God and said, God, I cannot do this. I need you to do it for me. This has overtaken me. I am powerless over my lust. Please help me. Show me the way. Teach me how I should understand and have a relationship with others. What the purpose of desire is, what the purpose of intimacy is. Why these things matter, what matter, what doesn't. And all of it was simple. Christ was so right when he said, my burden is easy. Because the simplicity of God's answers is always just whatever the truth is. And shame will keep me from admitting the truth. And shame is caused by me still being the judge in my life. So let God be our judge. Instead, God, who wished that none of us would perish and wanted to save every single one of us and paid for these sins in the first place, let's make that effort and that work of his, not in vain, for our lust. And let's go to God and say, I give this lust to you today. Show me how you would have me live. I know how I want to live. I want to live as a man with integrity who can love the wife I have with honesty and purpose and meaning. And we can't do that without God once lust has taken root in our heart. God is the one that has to cut it out and put himself there instead. And I do this every day because I can still well up with pain about what others had gone through in my life because of me. And even though I tried for years and years to be a good man, I just couldn't do it. But God can. And God will. He will give us a way and show us a way how to see people for real and to see them as equal and as important as us and not as an object. Like I said, being attracted to shapes and stuff like that, attraction is not lust. We're talking about the need to possess and control another person. And it was important that he said, but I say to you, if anyone lusts. See, he's not just talking about adultery, married men and women who have made a commitment to someone else. He says anyone who lusts after another to possess them. That's theft. It's degrading to the other person. But what God gives us is the ability to see the truth and the ability to today, just today, be an upright person who lives in a place of love for another. Today, I have a marriage and a wife who knows me, who knows all about me, and where my desire is very much focused on her, as it should be. And God allowed me, sometimes what focuses that is just humor or a moment, or us singing a song there is so much more to what we gain in intimacy when it is in the fullness of love, rather than just in relieving ourselves of pleasure. There is a greater pleasure in the fullness of love than there ever is in the physical, lustful desires and even the physical act of greedy sex and love. This I have seen, not because I overcame, but because I know the truth about myself, that I have overblown instincts. I have overblown desires. I nurtured that for so long. It is so much bigger than my power. And so I give it to God every day and say, help me with this. You direct me. You be the power that lives there, that I rely on instead. And it works. And I still see people that I find attractive and I find beautiful, and I have no desire to possess them and to fantasize about them. And that is a miracle. That's a miracle. Because a person like me was completely incapable of doing that on my own. Once I agreed, once I agreed that lusting after somebody, I was hooked. But any one of us can be free. All that matters is your honest desire to be healed. Take that to God. Tell God you want to be healed. And remember, before him was brought a woman who was caught in the act. They caught a couple in the act of adultery, and the Pharisees dragged this woman before Jesus. And, they already broke their own law because by Moses' law, they should have taken the man and the woman before Jesus. But they said, we caught a man and a woman, we caught this woman in the act of adultery, which means they caught the man in it too. And they didn't bring him. So they already broke their own law by doing this. They were trying to entrap Jesus. And they said, what should be done with her? They were trying to trap him because knowing if he said, let her go, well, then she's breaking the law of Moses and they could condemn him for that. Or if he said, stone her, which is to death, which is what the law of Moses was, then he would be breaking the Roman law because they couldn't kill anybody. They weren't allowed to. And for reference to that, that's why they brought Jesus before Pilate. And they said, we've brought, and he said, well, you take him and you deal with them. And they said, well, we can't. We are forbidden to kill somebody. So they were thinking, there's no way he can answer. But here's what's really important. When they brought this woman before him, he reached down to the ground and started writing in the ground. And what took place when the law was written? The finger of God wrote the laws of the Ten Commandments. It's right there in the Bible. And the finger of God wrote in the sand. He was once again showing his authority. That he writes the laws. And knowing that they had already broken the law by not bringing the man before, he said, whoever among you is without sin, cast the first stone. And starting with the oldest to the youngest, they all just drifted away and fled because they couldn't answer him. And then he went to the woman and he said, who's left here to judge you? He said, neither do I judge you. And he, with his own voice, said, go and sin no more. That's why we go to God, so that God's voice will speak into our hearts and write his laws into our hearts. And he will speak and say, go and sin no more. I send you with power and strength today to live as an upright, honest, loving, caring man who's an example of the life of Jesus Christ, the life of God, the life of compassion, understanding, peace, and integrity that deep down inside we all wish for, to be of great strength and not taken away, but to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and thank God for the life he has given us. Instead of condemning ourselves, God himself wants to speak those words to us and say, you are forgiven. I have paid for all this. Take my power. Go, sin no more. And those are the steps that we have to take. Because it is better. I made a lot of money back in my old world. It was my strength. It was a place I thrived. But I had to pluck out my right eye and my right hand in order to be the man that I wanted to be. Because even those people in the world that I was in, I loved and cared about. And I myself was using them. And I still love and care about those people. Great many of them are good friends. Always will be. Wonderful, beautiful, wonderful people that actually are more Christ-like than a lot of people that I know in religions. But the point is I couldn't deal and live with myself. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing or whatever's going on. The authority is still in me to make the decision that I don't want to be and act and feel the way I feel. But I also have to come to realize that I can't fix that. A broken mind can't fix the broken mind that's broken. I allowed all this in. It corrupted me. I knew it. I knew I couldn't see things properly. And God is what heals us. We don't have to struggle with this. We just have to keep surrendering that lust in us to God and keep giving it to God. And He will restore us to His will and His way of seeing things and His perspective and His way of life. And He will help us enter into His kingdom clean and washed. What's it say? These are those who wash their robes in the blood of the Lamb. Christ is the one. His blood washes us clean. His work will heal us. And He's ready. He wants to be a part of our life. But He's a gentleman and He doesn't covet us. He will wait until we're ready and we've made the decision. So if you're struggling with lust, make the decision as soon as you can. Talk it over with a close buddy. Pray about it with your pastor or your minister. There is a way out. That way is God. God has all power, and He loves you, and He wants to help you with everything in your life so that you can be the loving person, the caring person, and the beautiful person that you've always wanted to be, but got taken away by your desire and your covetousness. Not just for people, but for all things, because lust isn't just necessarily about possessing a person, but about possessing power, which is not ours, it's God's. Possessing strength, which is not ours, it's God's. That's why coveting anything that is not ours will always destroy our inner world in which we cannot see the truth. We can only see the result, that we're miserable, those around us are miserable, and we don't know why, and it's because we're trying to control instead of allowing God to be in charge and to control all things, because He's the one who made life, and He is what life is. We just get to experience it. And it is so worth it to actually be in love with another person with integrity, in a way that's honest. I would never wish for anybody to lose out on those wonderful, wonderful experiences. And lust will always keep us from truly knowing what that's like. But God will restore it. If He was willing to help somebody like me in the way I was at my worst, He's absolutely willing to help somebody like you. I love you guys. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you about this very important part of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is just truly hitting every important milestone of what it means to be alive and what it means to understand and know God. And it's for us to take in and meditate on and consider every single day of our lives, because we will learn more from it every day, no matter how much we read these words. I'm so honored and humbled to be able to talk about these things with all of you, and I thank you for your time and for allowing me to share with you why I love the Sermon on the Mount so much and what it means to me. It's just a great blessing. We will talk again soon on the next section, which is another powerful moment in the Sermon on the Mount.